Krishna Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashotara Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Ashotara Sata Shri Srimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nita Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 8, titled Manifestation of Brahma from Vishnu. And today we will do the last 4 verses of this chapter, verses 30 through 33. I'll read the Sanskrit and translations for 30, 31, and 32. And then we'll chant 33 together. Text 30. Chara charoko bhagavan mahidram ahindra bandhum shalilo pagudham kirita sahasra hiranyashringam avir bhavat koshtabaratnagarbham. Translations and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Like a great mountain, the Lord stands as the abode for all moving and non-moving living entities. He is the friend of the snakes because Lord Ananta is his friend. As a mountain has thousands of golden peaks, so the Lord was seen with the thousands of golden helmeted hoods of Ananta Naga. And as a mountain is sometimes filled with jewels, so also his transcendental body was fully decorated with valuable jewels. As a mountain is sometimes submerged in the ocean water, so the Lord is sometimes submerged in the water of devastation. Nivitam amna yamadu vrita shriya svakirti maya vana malaya harim suryendu vayav vagnamam tridam bihi parikramat pradaniker durasadam. Lord Brahma, thus looking upon the Lord in the shape of a mountain, concluded that he was Hari, the personality of Godhead. He saw that the garland of flowers on his chest glorified him with Vedic wisdom in sweet songs and looked very beautiful. He was protected by the Sudarshan wheel for fighting, and even the sun, moon, air, fire, etc. could not have access to him. Tarheva tanabhisara sarojam atmanam amba svasanam vyachcha dadarsha devo jagato vidhata nataf param loka visarga drishtihi. When Lord Brahma, the maker of the universal devastation, thus saw the Lord, he simultaneously glanced over creation. Lord Brahma saw the lake in Lord Vishnu's navel and the lotus flower as well as the devastating water, the drying air, and the sky. All became visible to him. So this one we'll do together. Saha karma bijam rajasa uparaktaha prajaha sisrikshan yat eva drishtva astot visarga abhimuktaha tam idyam avyakta vartmani abhiveshtita atma sakarma bijam rajaso parakta sakarma bijam rajaso parakta praja sirakshaniyadeva drishtva praja sisrikshaniyadeva drishtva astod visarga bhimukastamidyam astod visarga bhimukastamidyam avyakta vartman yabhiveshtitatma avyakta vartman yabhiveshtitatma sakarma bijam rajaso parakta praja sishrikshan niyadeva drishtva astod visarga bhimukhastamidyam avyakta vartman yabhiveshtitatma sakarma bijam rajasoparakta praja sishrikshanyadeva drishtva astod visarga bhimukhastamidyam avyakta vartman yabhiveshtitatma. Please chant. Sakarma bijam rajaso parakta Rasishikshanya deva drishtva astod visarga bhimukhastamidyam tavartmanya bhiveshtitatma Sakarma bijam rajaso parakta Prajasishikshanya deva drishtva astod visarga bhimukhastamidyam avyakta vartmanya bhiveshtitatma Sakarma bijam rajaso parakta Prajasishikshanya deva drishtva Stod visarga bhimukhastamidyam avyakta vartmanya bhiveshtitatma Sakarma bijam rajaso parakta drishtva astod visarga bhimukhastamidyam avyakta vartmanya bhiveshtitatma Sakarma bijam rajaso parakta Prajasishikshanya deva drishtva astod visarga bhimukhastamidyam avyakta vartmanya bhiveshtitatma Matajis Sakarma bijam rajaso parakta Rasishikshanya deva drishtva astod visarga bhimukhastamidyam tavartmanya bhiveshtitatma Saha hi brahma karma bijam seed of worldly activities Rajasa uparaktaha initiated by the mode of passion Prajaha living entities Sisrikshan willing to create progeny Iyat all the five causes of creation Eva thus Drishtva looking on Astot prayed for Visarga creation after the creation by the Lord Abhimukhaha towards Tam that Idyam worshipable Avyakta transcendental Vartmani on the path of Abhiveshita fixed Atma mind. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Lord Brahma, thus being surcharged with the mode of passion, became inclined to create, and after seeing the 5 causes of creation indicated by the personality of Godhead, he began to offer his respectful prayers on the path of the creative mentality. Purport. Even if one is in the material mode of passion to create something in the world, he has to take shelter of the Supreme for the necessary energy. That is the path of successful termination of any attempt. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 8th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Manifestation of Brahma from Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaf Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamshta He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Like a great mountain, the Lord stands as the abode for all moving and non-moving living entities. He is the friend of the snakes because Lord Ananta is his friend. As a mountain has thousands of golden peaks, so the Lord was seen with thousands of golden helmeted hoods of Anantanaga. And as a mountain is sometimes filled with jewels, so also his transcendental body was fully decorated with valuable jewels. As a mountain is sometimes submerged in the ocean water, so the Lord is sometimes submerged in the water of devastation. Lord Brahma, thus looking upon the Lord in the shape of a mountain, concluded that he was Hari, the personality of Godhead. He saw that the garland of flowers on his chest glorified him with Vedic wisdom and sweet songs, and looked very beautiful. He was protected by the Sudarshan wheel for fighting, and even the sun, moon, air, fire, etc. could not have access to him. When Lord Brahma, the maker of the universal devastation, thus saw the Lord, he simultaneously glanced over creation. Lord Brahma saw the lake in Lord Vishnu's navel and the lotus flower, as well as the devastating water, the drying air, and the sky. All became visible to him. Lord Brahma, thus being surcharged with the mode of passion, became inclined to create, and after seeing the 5 causes of creation indicated by the personality of Godhead, he began to offer his respectful prayers on the path of the creative mentality. These are the last 4 verses here of this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, where we've been able to see Lord Brahma's evolution as he is meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we can see he starts from a platform of not really being able to see anything, trying to discover everything out of his own accord and out of the faculties of his own sense perception, to realizing that they're insufficient and surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and finally not only being able to see the Supreme Lord, but actually being able to see what's described as aspects of the material creation here. At least what's present already, like we hear the Supreme Lord, the lake in Lord Vishnu's navel, the lotus flower, the devastating water, the drying air, and the sky. And it's also been described throughout this chapter that this instance here occurs after a partial devastation of the universe. So it's described in that instance that everything is actually still existing, just in the subtle form. We can see that there's a difference between something that's very physical, something we can directly perceive, and something that's subtle. Right? We ourselves, we have this body made out of earth, water, fire, air, ether. Right? Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, "Bhumirapo nalo vayu kamano burirevacha ahankara ityame bina prakritirashtata." That this earth, water, fire, air, but then there's also ether, mind, and intelligence. So there's these gross elements, and there's also the subtle elements of the mind, the intelligence, and the ego. And these are all things that we can perceive. It's very easy to see the intelligence, the mind, but it's not like you see this book or you see everything around you. You can understand it exists, though, because of its effects. Just like you can understand, and the scientists are able to see atoms through the electron microscope, not because they see directly what we see in the textbook, but they're able to see its effects, so they can logically understand that it exists. So here, we've gone through at least this third chapter, this third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and I think the fourth canto as well. They deal with the topics of Sarga and Visarga. Sarga is basically creation, and in these two verses here, text 32 and 33, this word Visarga actually appears. In 32, it's described as creation of the cosmic manifestation, and in 33, it's described as creation after the creation by the Lord. So in the following chapters here, we'll have Lord Brahma's prayers, which are actually very, very beautiful prayers, in which, as a devotee of the Supreme Lord, he's praying for the ability to create and actually the ability to perform his service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because as a devotee, he isn't actually praying for anything material, but he's actually praying to do his service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this regard, there's one video on YouTube that you can watch. It's His Grace Brigupati Prabhu debating with one Christian street preacher who's actually very, very famous. And he met Brigupati Prabhu at one of these universities, and this Christian guy, he basically says the same thing to everybody that he meets, basically just trying to help them realize that they're actually like super sinful and they're going to hell and they should surrender their life to Jesus. And Brigupati Prabhu, he really bewilders this Christian guy because he asks him, like, what would you do if Jesus came before you right here, right now? And that sort of like stunned him because nobody's ever really asked him that before. And if we know anything about the philosophy and theology of Christianity, that is something that they don't really think about. Like, I remember I told this incident once in class, but Amayama Prabhu and I, when we were at the DMV, we asked one Christian guy, it's like, what are you going to do when you get to heaven? What are your friends, family, what are they going to look like? And he was like really shocked. He was like, wow, I've never thought about that before. So this Christian preacher, he thought about it for a second, and he was just like starting to quote like Bible verses and trying to make some glorification of him, saying that like Jesus is God and all this kind of stuff. But Bhrigu was like, yeah, that's like very, very nice. But what I would say is I would first offer my respectful obeisances. And when I got up, I would ask, my dear Lord, how may I serve you? And we can see this is the mood of an actual devotee. Is they're praying to the Lord, and we can see so many devotees in the Srimad Bhagavatam, they're offering the Lord or the Lord's devotees very, very beautiful prayers. But these prayers, they aren't just, oh God, you're so great. Thank you for creating this world for me to enjoy. But it's, my dear Lord, how may I serve you? And this is the service of Lord Brahma, is to create this material manifestation. But because Lord Brahma is a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he understands that actually I'm not creating. And while it might seem like I'm creating, even though the small creation that I am doing, I wouldn't be able to do anything without the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But also I understand that the Lord, He's already created everything. In fact, in this very chapter, it's described, like I was saying, how everything, all of the living beings, all of the elements, all of the worlds, they already exist within the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just in their subtle and unmanifested form. So everything that Lord Brahma is about to create, it's actually already existing, right? But Krishna, he engages Lord Brahma in performing this service specifically because he is a devotee of the Lord. Even though it is described here in the purport that even if one is in the material mode of passion to create something in the world, he has to take shelter of the Supreme for the necessary energy. That is the path of the successful termination of any attempt. And we can see this is the difference between the demons and the devotees of the Lord. Right? We have the case of Hiranyakashipu, in which he was also very motivated by the modes of passion and ignorance. He also wanted to create so many things and be the controller of so many aspects. But what is the difference between Lord Brahma and the difference between Lord Brahma and Hiranyakashipu is that Lord Brahma is a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Hiranyakashipu is a demon, in which they're both engaged in some sort of activity. It's described here even that Lord Brahma is surcharged with this mode of passion. But because Lord Brahma is a devotee, he's approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly for everything. And he's praying to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for everything because he understands that all of his power, all of his energy, everything that he's able to do would not be possible without the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in this chapter, we've been able to see things through the eyes of Lord Brahma, where we're able to get direct perception of how he's seeing everything and how he's so bewildered. Because even though, it's described that Lord Brahma is basically the greatest jiva, the greatest living entity that we can see in this material world, right? The body of Lord Brahma is completely made out of intelligence, right? We can't even perceive how amazing it is that one's body can completely be made out of intelligence. We can't even imagine how smart someone like that must be. And it's described in Bhagavad Gita, the immense lifetime of Lord Brahma, in which his it's described that our lifetimes basically come and go just as Lord Brahma blinks his eyes. And we hear that pastime also. I think Rishi Kumar Prabhu was recently relating that story in his class, that where this king, he wanted to find the most suitable husband for his daughter. So they both visited Brahma Loka. And, while they were there was some musical dance performance going on. So because they were very polite, they waited for a correct opportunity to speak with Lord Brahma, which might have taken just a couple moments. And then they approached Lord Brahma with their question. And in the short time of span that had passed, multiple yugas in this material world had passed through it, and it was already almost Kali Yuga. So this is the position of Lord Brahma, right? Lord Brahma is so great. But even he's realizing that, I can't do anything, I can't even see or perceive anything without getting the mercy and without getting the blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is what differentiates him from the demons. And this is why it's described that Lord Brahma's mission was actually successful. And why you can see demons like Hiranyakashipu, they're ultimately unsuccessful in their attempts. They might have so much power, they might accumulate so much opulence, right? We see in the cases of Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, these demons, they are able to achieve materially so many things. But ultimately their attempts are simply foolish, because any power or any wealth or any opulence that they might achieve, the Supreme Lord can just take it away in any moment, any second. And we can see these great demons like Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, they're being imitated by these very, very small demons that we have in Kali Yuga. We can see these materialistic scientists, they're also trying to see everything separate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they're actually trying to create a world in which everything is separate from God. I was actually talking to one student at the University of South Carolina about this, because he was also very uninspired by this materialistic society. And I was describing to him how this whole world is basically engineered so people become disassociated from the fact that everything actually comes from God, right? We can see in schools nowadays that if you ask the students, if you ask the children, where does your food come from? They'll think for a second and they'll be like, oh, it comes from the store. Or they'll say it comes from the fast food restaurant. Or they'll say it comes from my parents. And if you sort of ask them, oh, then where do they get that? Where do they get that? They literally have the understanding that food comes from the store. They don't know anything beyond that. Where does the store get it from? They don't even have a conception that you can plant seeds in the ground, and from that earth, from that ground, will come plants, and on those plants, your food actually grows. They have no conception. They've become so disconnected from God. And they see man, they see the scientists. Oh, the scientists have been able to create oranges that last 3 months. You can just leave them on the shelf for 3 months and they'll be good and ripe for 3 months. Or these apples, you can pick them when they're green and you can put them in some sort of refrigerator and you can paint them and put some nice wax on them. So they'll look very, very shiny, very, very beautiful. You can pick fruits, vegetables, and just put them in the freezer, and you can have this. They have this really amazing advertising. They call these things fresh frozen, which is really like a contradiction, because if something's frozen, it can't really be fresh. But they have the idea that this is so much better because it was fresh when we froze it about maybe 3 months, 4 months, 4 years, 5 years ago. And same with these canned items, right? That these items, they were canned only Krishna knows how long ago, and they've been sitting in this can forever, and you're able to just use it whenever you like. So you're really actually disconnected from the fact that everything is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we see in the case of farmers, even nowadays they have this more dependence on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they have factual experience that so many things are out of their control. That without the rain, their plants, their crops won't get enough water, and therefore they won't be able to produce food, right? They have the understanding that without the proper fertilization of the soil and without the right nutrients there, if they just simply try and exploit the land, keep on planting the same crops there, that eventually they won't be able to grow anything there. They have the understanding that if the temperature is too cold, too late in the year, they'll miss the proper growing season for these vegetables. So many different things. If one actually gets into farming, right, we can inquire from our dear Avaduta Chandra Prabhu. But the nature of farming is that it makes one so dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead for everything, and one is actually so connected with all of these various different things. Versus like I was describing, we're trying to be able to control everything, right? We're in this material world because we're trying to be the supreme controllers of everything. We say that, okay, when this apple, I pick it from the tree, it goes bad in a week, but I want to have apples in 2 weeks. So what do? I try and modify the genes, or I pick it when it's green and I keep it in some refrigeration so I can have apples whenever I want, because now I'm the controller. I'm the supreme, right? But we see even in cases like this, these demons, even they're stumped. I remember when Charandeep Prabhu and I were crossing the border from Canada to America early on this year, we had like one orange in our truck, which we actually brought in from Canada, to Canada from America. But the border people were like freaking out because once, like 40 years ago, somebody from Canada brought one orange in, and that orange contained some sort of bug, and that family, they went back to Florida, which all of the main oranges are grown, and that bug, it multiplied, and it destroyed all of the citrus crops in the whole state of Florida. So for the whole year, people didn't have any oranges. So because we had that one orange, and also because Charandeep's did some powerful things with his visa situation. But we had to like go inside, we had to wait in line, they had to like inspect our whole vehicle because they're so afraid that even one small bug can ruin their idea of their control, of their idea of supremacy, of the fact that, oh, we did everything right. But you can see that even a small bug can ruin all of the plans of these materialistic people. So this is the attitude in which we should start to develop, in which we should try and teach people that actually you should have the vision that everything is coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that without the Supreme Lord, we wouldn't be able to do anything, right? Krishna even says in Bhagavad Gita that I give one intelligence, remembrance, and forgetfulness, right? Mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha. That Krishna even gives us the ability to think, right? You know, in Bhagavatam class, oftentimes you have all this like planned out, and then you sit there and you're like, what was I going to say? And you like forget everything, right? Because even though you did so much work, you did so much planning, you might have studied so much, still, even the ability for you to remember something that you tried so hard to, you might even forget. It's not under your control, right? Everybody has had practical experience of this. And in fact, we find ourselves so dissatisfied, and especially those materialistic persons, they have to suffer so much because of this very idea. And we see that even in the case of Hiranyakashipu, right? Such a great demon, right? We see nowadays there's like these small demons. They're really nothing like the Stalins and the Hitlers and the Napoleons of this world. They're really insignificant if we compare them to that of Hiranyakashipu. And Hiranyakashipu, he had so much power that even the demigods bowed at his feet, that he was able to perform all of the necessary functions of all of the different demigods just on his own. But he saw that his own child, his own son, Prahlad Maharaj, was not even the slightest bit afraid of him. And that he might have gotten so much instruction, so many ideas so he could become the next great demon. But Prahlad Maharaj was not under the control of Hiranyakashipu. And this bewildered Hiranyakashipu so much and angered him so much because he was trying to control everything. He was trying to be the supreme controller. But he saw that Prahlad was so aloof from his control, And he asked Prahlad, like, where are you getting your power from? Where is this great source of power that you're getting everything from? And what Prahlad Maharaj tells him is, you and I are getting our power from the same source. We're all getting our power from Krishna because everything comes from him. It's just I'm able to realize it versus you're still in ignorance. And this really infuriates Hiranyakashipu. And then we have this beautiful incident which comes next, where the Supreme Lord shows Hiranyakashipu how in control he is, where he makes all of these boons where I'm not going to die in the day or the night, inside or outside, by any animal or beast. Right? He tried to control everything, all the different aspects. But the Supreme Lord showed him how insignificant he really was. And we can see that once we actually free ourselves from this demoniac enjoyment mentality, that everything actually becomes very nice. And when we take full shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that we're actually, like I was describing earlier, we're actually able to perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's actually very beautiful what's being described here, how Lord Brahma, he's seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and even though Lord Brahma is so great, the Lord seems like a great mountain. And it's using this analogy of the mountain, like the other day we were sort of churning the nectar in the different ways in which we can relate the Supreme Lord to being a tree. But here the Supreme Lord is compared to that of a mountain. And it's described that the Supreme Lord, like a great mountain, he's actually able to give shelter to so many different things. Right? We read in the Krishna book, when the residents of Vrindavan, they're going to offer this wonderful sacrifice to Lord Indra. Krishna says that, you're saying you're getting all this stuff from Indra, but actually the biggest shelter for us is this Govardhan hill, because the cows, they graze there. We're getting all these wonderful fresh water, all of the trees, everything that we get for our maintenance, it's actually coming from Govardhan hill. So we can see that in this same way that the Lord, like a great mountain, he's able to provide shelter for all of the different living entities. And he's a great friend, and we can see it's described that Ananta Shesha, it's described how the peaks of a mountain might look very beautiful. Especially we hear in the Srimad Bhagavatam how, and Prabhupada even described, I think it's either Harishari Prabhu or Shrutakirti Prabhu, I think, that relates this instance. But while they were flying over the Alps, Srila Prabhupada said that, wow, some of these mountains, they extend all the way up to the heavenly worlds. And we hear descriptions of these mountains in the Srimad Bhagavatam where they have peaks of gold and all this wonderful things. But because Srila Prabhupada was a pure devotee, he was actually able to perceive these things. He was able to see these wonderful, beautiful, and amazing things that's described here in Srimad Bhagavatam. But these mountains with beautiful golden peaks, it's described that that's how the hoods of Ananta Shesha, his thousands and thousands of hoods, look. And being decorated with all these wonderful jewels, like, in the mountains, when you go in the different mountain caves, you might find so many beautiful jewels, and they might beautify the mountain in such a way. And in this same way, the Supreme Lord is being described. So we can see practically that if we don't consider ourselves to be the ultimate controller, maintainer of everything, and we completely surrender and pray to Krishna that, how may I engage in your service, that we'll actually be able to experience the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. And we have to provide the facility for people to see that also, which is why we have places like these beautiful temples, right? A temple isn't just a place for pilgrims to come to, when they want some sort of material benefit. We see, especially I know Charandeep and I, we traveled to so many different Hindu temples, and we would see, so many different kinds of people. They would just walk into the temple in their jeans and their shirt, probably going to or coming back from work. They go inside of the temple, they go before the deities, they might pray for a couple seconds, and then they take some Mahaprasad, which was bought from the store, and the pujari just shows it to the deity for about 2 seconds, and now it's Mahaprasad. So they give them some of this Mahaprasad, and then they think, oh, very nice, very nice. They might feel so good. But temples, they aren't just for people to walk in and receive some sort of blessings. But temples, they're actually meant to show people and give people practical experience of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is why we have all these beautiful pictures here. We have the Supreme Lord in his form on the altar. We also have this Srimad Bhagavatam class, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's described in so many different ways. So we should make sure that these temples, they're places where people can come to get the understanding that they aren't the controllers and that everything is actually coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this should be described in the Bhagavatam class, and especially in these early cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's so much emphasized, this idea of creation, sub-creation, and really the magnificence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? In the first canto, we hear Krishnastu Bhagavan Svayam, that Krishna is the Supreme and everything is coming from Krishna. But we don't actually hear so much of the actual pastimes of Krishna till the 10th canto. Right, we can see we have this huge stack of books here, and the 10th canto, it's towards the very end. So you have to go through basically all these books just to come to the 10th canto, where you actually fully dive in and understand really who is this Krishna that is supreme. But it's very important that we get the understanding that's progressively given to us in Srimad Bhagavatam, because otherwise, if we just directly hear the pastimes of Krishna, we'll misunderstand them. Why? Because it's described, like we were hearing in the pastimes of Lord Ram, that these incarnations of Ramachandra, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Krishna, that they come in these human-like forms, right? Not in the same sense in human bodies like you and I have, which are, plagued by Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, this birth, death, old age, and disease. But they come in human-like forms, meaning they come in the two-handed form. They might display different activities like that human beings display. So if we don't understand that Krishna, he's actually the Supreme Lord who from his navel came Lord Brahma, and who came as Varaha, who came as Nrsimhadev, like we have this beautiful Das Avatar Stotram, where we hear, Keshavadrita, Narahari Rupa, Keshavadrita, Brigupati Rupa, and all these different forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually Keshava. When we don't have this understanding, we'll just think that Krishna is just like you and I, that Krishna is just like a ordinary human being with material desires. You might think, oh, this Krishna, he's very, very lusty. You might think that, oh, Krishna, he's just some small boy. But we see here that this same Krishna is actually the great, wonderful, Supreme Personality of Godhead that we're reading about here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, who is the Supreme Lord of everything, who creates everything, in that everything comes from him. You can pull up this verse. I don't know if the thing's even still on, but somebody can pull up this verse of Bhagavad Gita. It's Bhagavad Gita 10:8. I don't think the Apple TV is still on. Wow, thank you so much. Okay, it's on now. Okay. There we go. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajantemam Buddha bhava samanvitaha. Krishna says, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me as the Lord within all of their hearts. And this purport here of Srila Prabhupada is actually very amazing. It's kind of long, so I won't read the whole thing, but I encourage devotees to read through this purport because it's very important, in which Srila Prabhupada, he very factually establishes the supremacy of Krishna based on the different shastras, right? Because in other divisions of what can be called, I guess, broadly Hinduism or other sampradayas, you might quote different things from Bhagavatam or from Bhagavad Gita, but they'll say actually these are lower levels of evidence. And they regard more the four Vedas, the Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, Atharva Veda, and the Upanishads. I think those are the Shruti, right? Or is it the other way? Yeah, those are the Shruti, and then they describe other things like Mahabharata, which contains Bhagavad Gita and Vishnu Sahasranam, as the Smriti, and even different Puranas like we hear Bhagavat Purana, Varaha Purana, Padma Purana. They regard these as actually lower levels of evidence. So they might say, oh yeah, Krishna might say this in Bhagavad Gita, but in this, in so-and-so Veda, and so-and-so this, it might say this. But we see in this purport, Srila Prabhupada actually very systematically establishes, based on different quotes from the Vedas, so many different Upanishads, he actually establishes how this Krishna's tu Bhagavan Svayam is even prominent in these different Vedas and in all these different Upanishads. So we can use amazing purports like this to really establish the supremacy of Krishna. We can very much study these, and it's very amazing actually how Srila Prabhupada has given us everything that we need just in his books. If we simply read Bhagavad Gita, Teachings of the Lord Chaitanya, Nectar of Devotion, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ishopanishad, all these books that were given to us by Srila Prabhupada, he's actually given us the essence of all the different Vedas, all the Puranas, all the Upanishads. Prabhupada, he's given us everything that we need to know. So we don't have to go through all of our life studying this Veda, this Purana. Like, I don't know if anybody's really taken a look, but I was looking at it this morning while I was chanting my japa. There's this chart that's out in the lobby, and it has all of the different Puranas and all the different shlokas that it has. And we think this Srimad Bhagavatam is so great because it has like 18,000 shlokas. But I was looking, and it was like Mahabharata has like 80,000 shlokas and like 1 lakh shlokas. And then it was like Padma Purana has 55,000 shlokas. And there's so many different shlokas that one can read through and one can learn. And if you just look at Bhagavad Gita, it's only 700. The Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavat Purana, it's only 18,000. So, there's so much out there that one can gain information from. But we're so fortunate that we actually have the books of Srila Prabhupada, that the essence of all of these Vedas, all of these Puranas, all these Upanishads have been given to us in their most essential form by Srila Prabhupada. And we can study purports like this and be able to defeat anybody in their philosophy. Like we were talking the other day, that when one joins the Brahmacharya ashram, just in 4 years, they can get like a PhD in philosophy, they can get a master's in sales and marketing, they can go to culinary school, they can get a master's in management, they can get so many things just from being in the Brahmacharya ashram. And Prabhupada would even say that in the schools, in the gurukuls, what should the curriculum be? He said, you should simply study my books, and you will be able to learn everything that you need. Everything that you need to know, I've put it in my books. So these schools, these gurukuls on these farms that we can establish, we can simply teach them the knowledge. We can simply give them the books of Srila Prabhupada. And like I was saying, they'll have all the essential knowledge and more that they'll need for their life. Right? You look and there's so much practical knowledge even that's given to us in Srila Prabhupada's books. And especially now that we have all of Prabhupada's lectures, we have the lectures of our own spiritual master, of so many great devotees that have come. We have access actually to so much knowledge, so much information, that we don't need this mundane science. We don't need to study from these material, atheistic textbooks. We don't need all of these things. We don't need to send our children to the materialistic school. We don't need these supermarkets and stores where we can get food that was freshly packaged 2 years ago, right? But all we need is just these books written by Srila Prabhupada and these farms, these wonderful farm communities, where we can show people and we can give people practical access in which everything actually comes from Krishna. And we can practically engage them in the Lord's service, as Krishna says here, that He is the source of everything. And knowing that everything comes from me, that the intelligent person will actually engage in my service. So we should have these temples, we should have these farms, we should have these books, and with that we can engage the whole world in Krishna's service. So I'll end my class here. I think I was just on time. So we'll start on the new chapter, chapter 9, these beautiful prayers of Lord Brahma, starting tomorrow. And if anybody has any questions, comments, or corrections, we can take those now. Krishna Keshwar Prabhu, do you have anything? Anybody with anything? Amiyama Prabhu? Mitraman? Okay. Mataji's, any questions? Dirga Mataji?
I was just wondering if you can share in the TA book scores the video of Brigupati Prabhu talking to that Christian.
Yeah. I can send that. It's actually like a pretty famous video. I think it almost has like 500,000 views or something like that. And literally the title is like where I blew it with this Hare Krishna. Because even he admits that like, wow, like I met this Hare Krishna and he like completely like stumped me. He like completely defeated me. And there's other devotees that also give like commentary on that video. But yeah, I can send that and I can share that for sure.
Okay.
Anything else from anybody? Nope. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasinubhyacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavabhyo namo. Specifically oranges, like they really